Politics here, and we have a new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. The gentleman seems to have pretty much come out of nowhere, and I guess this could have some impact on the president. The president, of course, wants a spending bill, money for both Israel and Ukraine. Mike Johnson doesn't see things that way. Where do you see this going, Steve?
Well, yes, Mike Johnson is a total unknown. He did come out of nowhere. And he has announced that the House is going to take up the funding bill for Israel this week, $14.5 billion. And this is, Biden very much has wanted to link aid with Ukraine to aid with Israel, partly because aid to Israel is so much more popular. And he's it's an old congressional tactic to try to link an unpopular idea with a popular idea and get them through together. But he has the support of Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader from Kentucky, who also wants the two linked together. But it's beyond, Mike, this is really not just about money, and it's not just about aid. It's really about America's view in the world. Joe Biden, after he came back from his whirlwind tour in the Middle East, made a national speech in which he talked about America's responsibility and linked the two invasions together, and demonizing both Putin invading Ukraine and Hamas invading Israel, and saying, these are two friends of democracy who are facing these external threats. And he linked them together not just practically, but almost spiritually. And a lot of commentators compared Biden's speech to Ronald Reagan. He used to talk about America as a shining city on a hill, and right, a very robust view of America's role in the world. And what you're seeing among at least some Republicans, particularly in the House, is a much narrower view of America's responsibilities, led by Donald Trump, increasingly isolationist. This is America first, not America as a world leader. It's a very different view, and that's behind a lot of the Ukraine fatigue and this growing unhappiness in Republican ranks. It's not just about the money. It's about a much larger concept of what is America's responsibility around the world. And Biden, McConnell, are much more in the Reagan-esque tradition than Donald Trump and some of the House Republicans.
Yeah, it's interesting because Democrats, have generally been the doves and Republicans more the hawks. But especially when it comes to Russia, growing up as I did, Russia has been the enemy my entire life. And I just find it odd that Republicans don't see the value in stopping Russia from taking Ukraine. Even if it would talk about the money, whatever the case may be, to me, there's a moral reason to stand your ground against Russia.
Well, I agree with you, and a lot of other people agree, but I think there are two or three things working there. Partly it's Trump personally, and he's always had a certain regard for Putin and other strong men around the world. He made a speech just the other day praising the strong man in Hungary, Orban. And he's always had he's never really hidden it very well. A certain respect and affection for Putin because he's a strong man, because he overrides a lot of democratic values. Plus, there is this larger sense of you have a strain in Republican Party of let's not spend money abroad. There's that there are issues here at home, like the border, that need financing, and so there's a lot going on there. But it's also this Trumpian idea of America first. And when you say America first, it inevitably diminishes America as a world leader, America as with a sense of responsibility around the world. So there are a number of factors at work there, and it's not just the money.
So Johnson wants to separate the two, the idea of money for Israel and the money for Ukraine. So there's some deal has to be struck here at some point for money to go to Ukraine. What's going to happen? Will it be likely be less money for Ukraine than the president wanted, or what's the likely outcome?
Well, even though Johnson, as a backbencher, voted against money for Ukraine, he's now the Speaker of the House. And, people change and grow when they have different responsibilities. And he has tried to say he's going to be part of the government. And as you and I have talked before, part of what happened in the Republican ranks is you have a whole strain of members of Congress who are against everything, and they're there not to legislate, to perform. And frankly, I think your new Senator J.D. Vance is starting to identify with that approach to governing as well. And so Johnson, I think in the end, will have enough goodwill as a new speaker to get this done. There might be some conditions on aid to Ukraine. I mean, let's be honest, Ukraine is not the world's model in terms of efficient government. It's long been plagued by corruption, and there might be some limits placed on anti-corruption measures on the Ukrainian money, and maybe it'll be reduced slightly. But I think in the end, Johnson has said, we can't let Putin win. And so if he believes that, if he lives that adage, the money's going to get through. It might get through in a separate package. It might be smaller. It might be later, but it's going to get through.
I just real quick remembered something that Trump had said about one reason he likes strong leaders. And his point was, if you can convince them to do things your way, you can get it done because they don't have to run anything by their Senate or their House or anybody else. They just get it done. Which actually, when he first made that point, that made sense to me.
Well, except, democracy is messy. And, this is a very big country. It covers a vast geographical area. There are innumerable differences, geographical, racial, religious, economic, social, in this country. And there's only one way to govern this country. There's only one way, Mike, and that's through compromise. And that's been that's the tension that runs through Washington today. And one of the interesting questions about Mike Johnson, does he see himself as part of the governing wing of the Republican Party, or does he see himself as part of the bomb-throwing wing of the Republican Party? That's going to tell us a lot going forward.
All right, Steve Roberts, all the time we have. I'll thank you for yours and talk to you next week. Congressman Brad Wenstrup, who wants to clarify one or two things where he disagrees with Steve Roberts. And good to have you on the program, Congressman. How you been?
I'm doing all right, but thanks for having me on to say a few things.
Yeah. All right. So what did he say? Were you? I guess he made some points about things the Congress did or said, and you said that was simply not true.
Yeah, he was referring to the Ukraine situation, and he was giving more an opinion or talking points against Republicans, basically saying Republicans want to get out of Ukraine and this and that. And that isn't necessarily true, and it isn't true really at all. As a matter of fact, if you look at the last supplemental is on the House floor, supplemental for Ukraine, there were several veterans, especially from Intelligence Committee, that voted against it, not because we're not for it. We may even be for more funding. It depends on what it's going for. And so what we're concerned about is what are we spending the money on, and what is the mission of in Ukraine? Is it to drive Russia out? What are we trying to accomplish? And so several of us got together, and it's all veterans, and there were 5 of us that worked with Mike Garcia, who really led it. We put together a 15-page paper of what we would like to see funding go towards in Ukraine. What we feel is missing is a commander-in-chief sitting in the Oval Office explaining to America what we're spending money on and why, and what is our goal. The president has just said, we're in it for as long as it takes. Well, that's not a mission statement, and it's hard to respond to that. So we actually put one together, and it's a 15-pager. We actually had it printed, published. It was actually taken by Speaker Mike Johnson and Mike Turner, who's the chair of the Intelligence Committee, took it to the White House last week, and it was well received. So he was wrong in saying that, this is all Donald Trump, and Trump's behind this, and to want to withdraw from the world. That it's far be it. And that's really pretty much where Republicans stand, is that we want to know what we're spending money on and what we hope to accomplish with it. And so since we're not getting it from the White House, we put something together to open up the conversation. And I hope we will have a good conversation with the White House on how we want to proceed in Ukraine to defeat Russia and drive them out of Ukraine.
Well, I agree with you there, and that's my thing is if the idea has to be to win, and if you're not going to supply them with what they need to win, then what are we doing? But I'm a firm believer that Ukraine should win, and we should help them win.
Absolutely. And one of the proposals that we really have is that let the United States provide the weapons and intelligence and help with the planning that the Ukrainians can pull off and complete the mission. And we really want Europe to contribute more on the humanitarian aid front. It has, Europe has vested interest in this too, obviously. Sure. So we actually, put together a plan to talk about how we can do this together with our allies and have a serious conversation rather than just putting a number out on the floor and throwing it out there and say we're going to deliver this much in aid and assistance. Well, what is it for, and what do we hope to accomplish?
All right. What about
that's where I think Steve Roberts. Go ahead.
What about the new speaker, Mike Johnson? He voted against it, I guess, the last time it came up for funding. Do you know what his thought process was? Or is?
Yeah, he's the one who brought our proposal over to the White House. It was in the same vein, people reacted when they saw these veterans on intelligence committee saying no to the supplemental. At that time, we said, it's not that we're against it. We want a plan, and we'll help put together a plan, so let's do that. And we did it. And now it's up for conversation because we weren't seeing what we need out of the White House and from the commander-in-chief to be able to say what we want to accomplish there. So Mike Johnson's with us. He brought that over, and he said to us last night in our conference telephone call that it was well received. Jake Sullivan has it, and hopefully it'll open up engagement on how we go ahead and spend money in Ukraine to defeat Russia.
Did you have a dollar amount attached to what you proposed, your group?
No, not exactly, but we recommended what types of weaponry we thought would be helpful. Again, this is coming from veterans, and there were 5 of us along with Mike Garcia. Mike was the mainstay. He's a Navy pilot, and we also got other members starting to sign on to it. And like I said, it was the chairman of the Intelligence Committee and the Speaker of the House bringing it to the White House over the weekend.
Well, good. That's the direction I'd like to see it go, so we'll follow that for the next few days and see what shakes out. But Brad,
I'd be glad to get you. Glad to get you a copy of it.
That'd be fantastic. I'm sure it'd be some light reading, no doubt.
For sure.
All right, Brad Wenstrup,
Thanks,
I appreciate you checking in. Take care.